This is it then, the end of my first season playing volleyball abroad. I signed with Uppsala in the summer of 2022 and we're now in the spring of 2023 fighting to stay in the league. So in today's video, we'll be looking at the last bit of volleyball we played that season and what came next. A quick reminder of where we are then. We're currently in game 3 out of 3 in a playdown series against Sellia. And if we lose that game, we have to play another series against Malmö, the team top Division 1. And if we lose that series, we're relegated. I'd signed a 2-year contract with Uppsala, meaning if we got relegated, my time in Sweden would be cut short by a year and my Swedish adventure would be over. So no pressure. So to refresh your memory of the series so far, first of all, we played Sellia at home on a Saturday, went 2-0 up, got reverse swept, lost 3-2. Then the following Saturday, we played them away, went 2-0 down, on the brink of defeat, reverse swept them, 1-3-2. Now this last game would be on the Wednesday, so not a lot of time to rest and prepare for this final game against Sellia. Everything's on the line here. Here we go. We lost. Bit anticlimactic, don't you think? Yeah, unfortunately, don't actually have the footage for this game. I'm not sure if it's because after the loss, our coach was just too depressed to download it, but either way, I don't have any footage. I still have plenty of thoughts from the game, obviously, but so that you still have some volleyball to enjoy while I'm talking, I thought I'd cut to the chase and spoil it for you. So yeah, we did lose. So this footage you're about to see is from the first game of our series against Malmö. What happened then? Well, to the surprise of no one, having already had 2 super close games, this last one was no different, and it actually also went to 5 sets. From my perspective, it was similar. I didn't start and came on here and there, again making a decent impact in the 4th set, which we won to take it to 5. So I did start the 5th, and in my head at this point I was thinking, this is it, I'm the guy, when I come on, we win. I was wrong, and we did not. The 5th set panned out painfully in much the same way as the previous 5th set had gone for us, in that Sellia took an early lead with a couple of big points from them and a few cheap points from us, and then we never really got back into the set, so they won it pretty comfortably. Obviously, this was pretty hard to take. The game had been so close and competitive and had been a really enjoyable series, but losing in such a fashion really, really hurts. I remembered the car I was in on the way back, no one speaking a word, as everyone was just too gutted. There wasn't a lot of time to sit around sulking though, as we had work to do. We met up for training the next day, and it was time to look forward to the next match, which would be against Malmö that Saturday. For those whose Swedish geography isn't brilliant, this is where Uppsala is, and this is where Malmö is. We're the furthest team north in the league, so this is about as far as anyone could go to travel for a game. We had 2 days of training to prep and scout, and to try and practice the game plan, and then it was a very early start, an even longer journey, down to Malmö, ready for the biggest game of the season. Given what came before, it's probably not that surprising to hear that we were very, very tired. Not just physically, but mentally. Having to psych yourself up for a game takes effort. It's hard. Doing it again and again after such grueling games was brutal. And this game against Malmö proved to be one too many. We were really not up for this game in the way we would have been had we had some time to rest. I can't show you the best proof of this, which would be the hitting warm-up from this game and any of the games from the Sellia series. The previous game's warm-up was a bounce-a-thon, everyone jumping max height and hammering balls down. This warm-up, I honestly think as many balls went into the net as did over it. It was woeful. About our opposition then. The gap between Division 1, which Malmö are in, and the Elite Series, which is what we played in Sweden is pretty big. All the Elite Series teams recruit players from overseas. Most pay some or all of their players. Whereas Division 1 is much more comparable to how NVL functions in the UK, where there might be a lot of very good experienced players kicking about, but volleyball generally isn't the first priority for anyone's life in the way that it is in the Elite Series. Naturally then, we were strong favourites, but Malmö had several players that had played pro in Europe and who had won the Swedish Championship in their heyday, so they certainly weren't going to be a pushover, especially given the circumstances we were playing them under. The first set went well though. It was a fairly comfortable start to the match and we went 1-0 up without too much difficulty. The second set? Not so good. You'll have seen I've left in quite a lot of the sloppier moments. The effect of being tired is one of those things that's really hard to quantify, but I think over the course of the game you can really see it. There's just a lot more things not quite working. Making hard work of easy balls in defence and reception, sets not quite going where they should be, and the big one for us in this game, in my opinion, the attacking. A lot of hitting errors on balls that really should have been kills. As I've said before, it's always hard to know without looking at the stats how much losing a set is because you did things worse versus the other team stepped up. Like, did we just miss more, or did they defend better and that put more pressure on us to kill the ball and so we made more errors? Can't say for sure, but on this occasion, my money is on we shit the bed. Anyway, the third set was much better. It was a bit of a weird one personnel-wise. Gustav's knees were spent, so he'd started the match off and wasn't planning on playing. But then Albert, the libero, got injured and thought he'd have to come on. So Gustav came on for me to get warm so we could be ready for either him or I to replace Albert as a libero. But then Albert thought he'd be okay to keep playing and Gustav's knees felt okay. So I felt a bit unlucky at the time to come off, but to be fair, I'm glad it worked out like that because Gustav played really, really well, especially in attack, which is where we were struggling. The fourth set was basically a rerun of the second. Not great. Malmö took a big lead and we never really closed the gap, which meant we were staring down the barrel of another 5-setter. Insane. Looking back, on the plus side, as with anything to get better at something, you need reps, and winning 5th sets is no different. So it was great experience to go through this, even if at the time it was quite unpleasant. Something about sports psychology I've learned over the years is that it's important not to be afraid to lose. To be clear, that doesn't mean you're happy to lose, of course you're not, but you mustn't be afraid of it. If all you can think about is how awful it'll be when you lose, you're going to be tense and you're going to choke. You perform well when you're free and relaxed, not when you're anxious and tight. So, it's a bloody good job I was on the bench as we started this 5th set, as I was an absolute state. I was so anxious watching this. After the game, we had a few weeks off before the return leg at home. I was really confident once well rested, we would beat Malmö. So if we won today, that would be that. But if we lost today, it would mean that even if we then won at home, we'd play a decider, which would be a golden set to 15. And I wasn't confident we would win that one short set 10 times out of 10. Ever since we knew we were going to be in a relegation scrap, I'd been really anxious, as if we got relegated, it'd mean my time in Sweden was over. And I really didn't want that to happen. That anxiety had been building and seemed to be peaking during this 5th set. I have never, ever willed the team to win as badly as this before. Flip-flopping between elation when we won a point to gut-wrenching dread when we lost was unbearable. Despite going comfortably up at the start of the set, we then got stuck in a rotation and blew the lead. It could not have ended more closely. We finally got our chance with a match point at 14-13 and just needed a side out. My God, honestly, I have never been so relieved to win a volleyball game before, and that's not a good thing. I feel like you should be playing sport to enjoy experiencing positive emotions, not to be enjoying the absence of the negative emotions. But maybe it's unavoidable when the stakes are this high. I'm not sure as it was a first for me. Bottom line is, thank God we won. So we had a couple of weeks off at last to rest and prepare for the home leg. I said a few minutes ago I thought if we had a break like this, then we'd be able to show our class and win decisively. And I was right. Again, unfortunately, I don't actually have the footage from this game, so I've just had to spoil it for you once more. But either way, it was a great way to end the season. I think we had a season high and over about 300 people watching this game, so it was a fantastic way to cap off the season. What next then? Well, we had a few more weeks of training before we broke for summer, and I kept gymming, of course, and then started to play some beach volleyball as well. I'll cover my beach volleyball adventures in some future videos, as I really enjoy playing beach, but I also really suck at playing beach. So I've really not done it very much. So I really enjoyed having a few weeks here to train regularly 2-3 times a week, and I did get a lot better in that time, but still not that much better. I'm still quite bad. Generally though, this time in Sweden at the end of the season was really nice. I kind of got to experience Sweden more as a normal person than as a volleyballer. Obviously I did still play quite a lot of volleyball, as I'm sure I always will in life, but the work-life balance was a lot more relaxed. So again, I got a more authentic feel of what it's like to live in Sweden because I had more hours in the day to go out and do things rather than just get home from work, go to the gym, go to training, come home, eat, sleep, repeat. In the UK at least, I think when you think of Sweden, you probably just picture winter wonderland. But for me, and I think this is true for most Swedes, the real magic of Sweden is definitely in the summer. The days are insanely long. I've talked a lot more about this in another video if you want to know what my thoughts were of life living in Sweden. Anyway, I then went back to the UK at the end of June for about 5 weeks before going back to Sweden for pre-season training in August. Now, this time I'd had in Sweden had easily been the hardest I'd ever worked in my life. As a student and at school, I was really lazy and didn't push myself that much with either studies or volleyball. But now living in Sweden, as I said, the work-life balance was quite brutal. I've talked about that a lot in some previous videos. Nevertheless, my plan initially for summer was I'm going to work really hard still. I'm going to be in the gym, 4 or 5 days a week, running, eating brilliantly, and have a really, really good off season. So I come back to pre-season in the best shape of my life. And although that was the initial plan, I kind of got home and just went, nah. I ended up going, I'm going to play loads of golf, drink lots of beer, play loads of sport that isn't volleyball, see my friends, and basically still pretend that I'm still a student. In hindsight, probably not my best idea. I think it's reasonable to have wanted to relax a bit, and I probably should have accounted for that with my planning for how I was going to spend the summer. And there's probably some semblance of a middle ground I could have found that would have been a bit healthier, as I did get quite out of shape in this sort of 5-week period. And I really paid for that one and came back for preseason. It was very brutal. Those 5 weeks, though, were really enjoyable, although they absolutely motored by. And by the time August came around, I was very excited to go back to Sweden and start trying to be an athlete again. The only thing that was unambiguously just bad about having to go back to Sweden was having to leave Meg behind. I've said before about how I want to be really honest about the good things and the bad things of trying to play volleyball overseas, and by far the biggest bad thing for me was having to leave Meg behind so often. Because of Brexit, we can't just turn up in Europe, obviously. I was able to be there as much as I wanted because I had a work permit, and even though Meg's a very talented chef and had loads of job offers, the paperwork never managed to get through the sort of Swedish bureaucracy. So she was never able to get a work permit, so just had to be in Sweden as a tourist, meaning 3 months in for every 3 months out. So Meg was only in Sweden with me half of the time. So this time it synced up that I had to go on my own, and that just really sucked. Still, it was back to work for me, both at school and at volleyball. Getting ready for season number 2 in Sweden. Before things got into full swing though, I had an extra adventure on the cards. My very first trip with the England senior team, and it was a big one. We were heading off to Korea.